Most people who struggle with healthy eating don't have a knowledge problem. They know vegetables are better than chips. The gap isn't information. It's the distance between knowing and actually doing it on a Tuesday night when you're tired. You haven't prepped anything, and the easiest option is not the one you wanted to choose. Healthy eating doesn't get easier by learning more about nutrition. It gets easier by reducing the number of decisions required to do it. Everything in this video is about closing that gap. The 2-nutrient formula. Hunger is the most reliable reason healthy eating falls apart. When a meal doesn't satisfy, the next food decision happens sooner, under more urgency, and with less discipline available. 2 nutrients consistently reduce post-meal hunger: protein and fiber. Protein triggers satiety hormones, specifically GLP-1 and PYY, and takes longer to digest than carbohydrates or fat alone. Fiber slows gastric emptying, feeds the gut microbiome, and adds volume to meals without adding significant calories. Research consistently shows that meals containing both produce longer periods of fullness than meals high in one but not the other. The practical application is simple. Before eating anything, ask whether it contains a meaningful amount of protein and a meaningful amount of fiber. A chicken breast and white rice has protein but almost no fiber. Adding a handful of roasted vegetables or a legume fixes it. A piece of fruit has fiber but no protein. Pairing it with nuts or Greek yogurt changes the satiety profile of the whole snack. Every meal doesn't need to be optimized. Using this lens for most meals is enough to shift the pattern. Environment design. What you eat is influenced less by willpower than by what requires the least effort to access. Behavioral research on food choice consistently finds that the items easiest to reach, most visible, and requiring the fewest steps to eat are the ones consumed most often, regardless of stated preferences. Washed and cut fruit and vegetables at eye level in the refrigerator get eaten. Fruit in a bowl on the counter gets eaten. Nuts in a clear jar on the counter get eaten. The same items stored in opaque containers at the back of a shelf behind other things are regularly forgotten. The reverse is also true. Moving snacks that undermine your goals to the back of a high cabinet, behind other items in an opaque container, reduces how often they're eaten. Not because you've restricted yourself, but because the friction of accessing them is slightly higher. Small increases in friction produce large changes in behavior over time. Reorganize the refrigerator before you shop. Visible, easy-access real food is most of the strategy. The anchor meal method. Meal planning fails for most people because it requires decisions at a time when you have no information. You don't know how hungry you'll be, what time you'll get home, or what you'll feel like eating 4 days from now. Rigid plans meet real life and collapse. The anchor meal method requires less. Choose 1 meal per day that you eat consistently. The same basic composition, easily assembled, reliable in its ingredients. For most people, this is breakfast or lunch. It doesn't need to be the same exact dish every day. It needs to be the same general structure: protein, fiber, some fat, done in under 10 minutes. When that meal is consistent, the other 2 have room to be flexible without the whole day falling apart. 1 anchor holds the pattern. 3 optimized meals every day is a project. 1 reliable meal repeated is a habit. Prep components, not meals. Batch cooking full meals produces containers of food that feel repetitive by day 3 and often go to waste. Prepping components keeps meals flexible and reduces the time required to build them. Cooked grains store well for 4 to 5 days. Roasted vegetables hold for 3 to 4. Hard-boiled eggs, washed salad greens, cooked legumes, and portioned nuts all extend the week's meals without requiring a Sunday afternoon dedicated to containers of identical dishes. With components in the refrigerator, a weeknight meal becomes assembly rather than cooking. Grains, vegetables, a protein, something acidic, a squeeze of lemon, or a spoonful of tahini covers most of what a nutritionally complete meal needs to be. The barrier to making it is significantly lower when the parts are already done. The 80-20 approach. Nutritional perfection is not the goal, and treating it as the goal makes everything harder. The 80-20 principle applied to food means that roughly 80% of your meals contribute meaningfully to the way you want to eat, and 20% are flexible. A dinner out, a celebratory dessert, a meal that was convenient rather than optimal. The damage most people do to their eating patterns comes from the all-or-nothing response to the 20%. One bad meal becomes a bad day, which becomes a bad week, because the standard was set high enough that any deviation reads as failure. Abandoning the 80% because the 20% happened is the pattern that prevents consistency, not the 20% itself. Protect the 80. Let the 20 exist without consequence. Reading labels in under a minute. Most nutritional label reading produces more confusion than clarity. 3 numbers are worth checking and can be scanned in under a minute. First, serving size, because every other number on the label refers to it. A serving is often smaller than the amount a person actually eats. Second, added sugar, because it appears separately from total sugar on US labels, and is the number most consistently linked to downstream metabolic issues. Third, protein per serving, because low-protein packaged foods rarely satisfy and often lead to eating more of the same thing or something else shortly after. Ingredients matter too. A short ingredient list of recognizable items is almost always preferable to a long one, regardless of what the front of the package says. The recovery meal. A few days of poor eating doesn't require a cleanse, a reset, or a period of restriction to undo. The body responds to the next meal you give it, not to the meals from 3 days ago. The most useful thing after a stretch of heavy, low-fiber, high-sodium eating is a single meal high in vegetables, adequate protein, plenty of water, and nothing that requires guilt or discipline to eat. One meal, then another. The pattern reasserts itself faster than most people expect when it isn't treated as a moral failure requiring punishment. Consistency over time is built from returning to the pattern after it breaks, not from preventing it from ever breaking. Healthy eating isn't complicated. It's just inconvenient until it isn't. Most of the difficulty is structural, not motivational, and structural problems have structural solutions.